Good evening. This is Pastor Barbara, aka Preacher with Parrots. This is the second video today. It is still January 28th, 2015. We've been in the book of wisdom, in the book of Proverbs, talking about practical things. And while we're doing that, I wanted to make a short video, and I want to add others to it later, about looking for a job. There's a lot of the things that we read about wisdom, and about going about some things the right way and the wrong way of doing certain things, and about wisdom versus foolishness. And because I know so many people who are looking for a job, and I get so many prayer requests for people who are looking for a job, that I wanted to make a short video, and boy, here comes Sammy. Sammy, you don't know I'm making a video, do you, huh? Yeah, on my last video I was talking about people and how they treat their animals. Well, Sammy is not usually out here when I'm doing a broadcast, but because I had to go in the other room for my cell phone for a minute, had to open the door. Therefore, Sammy is out here. Okay, now I've given you some love. Now you've got to go. No, that's not an invitation to get back on my lap. You go off and be happy. Join me when the video is over with. I want to talk about getting a job. If I were to ask you if you're looking for a job, I know an awful lot of people that would say yes. However, we got to click on something. However, if we were to tell the absolute truth, not really looking for a job, looking for a paycheck. Is that right? Well, yeah, it's right. But we don't get a paycheck unless we have a job. So, well, we're really looking for a paycheck. We are looking for a job. It'd be nice to get a paycheck. And a few people have figured out how to do that. But I'm talking about a real job, a job with a future. I want to talk about some jobs. Now, I'm going to talk later about paychecks, maybe in another video. I may not get to that in this video. But I want to talk about some jobs that may not bring a lot of cash or may not bring any cash right now. But what if I could show you that while you're not working anyway, because you're looking for a job, and until you get one, what if I could show you that some things you could volunteer at, or some things you could do for people, although it wouldn't bring you a paycheck day after tomorrow, it would help you get a better job, maybe help you get a job, and might make the difference in the kind of money you make. I'd like to talk about that before I talk about the kind of jobs that bring in money. But first, let's talk about an emergency situation. There are a lot of people, and a lot of them are friends of mine, and also because of the organization Prayer and Praise that I'm the founder and director of, I get so many prayer requests that I know what a lot of people's regular needs are. And there are people who need to make a car payment next week or lose their car. So while I want to talk for a little bit about permanent jobs and how to look for and how to find the kind of job that has some permanence to it, there are occasions when we would do almost anything that's legal and not immoral in order to get a little bit of money to put food on the table tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. When I started as an evangelist, it was in 1953. There were no credit cards. I don't know when credit cards started, but there were no credit cards in the 1950s. When credit cards did start, they started with gasoline companies. And the reason they did is, if they could give you a credit card, let's say with Gulf, or with Mobil, or with Standard, and you had a credit card, you would buy that brand of gas, even if it was a cent or two more. So I suppose that's the reason that credit cards, at least as I knew them, became available first for gasoline. But an evangelist needs gasoline to get from one place to another, and that meant cash. And if you didn't have gasoline in your car didn't go. And if your car didn't go, you didn't go. I've done a number of things. Rose has done a number of things. Honest work. I was always honest and upfront, said, look, I'm not going to be working very long. My work is not to get a job and remain here, regardless of how good a job it is or what the pay is. I'm an evangelist. I need some money. When I get the money I need to put gas in my car and go where I need to go, I'm going. Rosa and I worked in a turkey packing plant in Nebraska. I took out every heart. She took out every fourth gizzard. We made a lot of friends. We did a lot of things. I worked in the field, in the Desaje de Betabel. That's bending over with a short hoe, which is hard if you're tall. I'm not tall anymore because my body has shrunk. You do that when you get old. But I used to be considered a tall woman. And the taller you are, the harder that job is, because the farther you have to bend. Because you got a short hoe and they're sugar beets, and the purpose is to, a certain time of the year, you have to weed them. Well, I've done a little of everything. So I know what working is just because you need money right now. And I know what it is to get a long-time job that you're going to work half of your life or all of your life doing. And, of course, that's the kind of job you want. Let's talk about the short-term jobs, if you need one. There's things you can do to help your situation. When I was young, people didn't have any money for food. They used to go to people's homes and say, you know, I haven't had anything to eat yet today. You have work for me. When I was a kid, people didn't stand on corners where I lived, in the suburbs of Detroit. I don't know about other parts of the country. But people just didn't say, give me money. People would say, give me a job. Obviously, a woman with her children, her husband's off at work, she's not going to have a man in the house doing, you just didn't just trust strangers all that much. There were certain inconveniences and certain dangers, but there was always things to be done. Cars to be washed, grass to be mowed, windows to be washed. And people needed money, and nobody asked for money. People asked for a job. Now, people ask for money. I like the old-fashioned way of asking for a job. There's something honest and old-fashioned about working. Even if you're working for lunch and you're not going to see any money at all, and somebody's going to make you a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and a glass of milk and maybe a piece of pie and sit you on the front steps or on a lawn chair on the lawn and give you food, if that's as close as it gets. But there's something that moves people my age, and there's enough of us around, and we still hire people. So if you knew what we're looking for in people, it might help you know how to deal with people my age. Because there are a lot of us, and there's a lot of things we can't do. Let me tell you some of the things that doesn't work with people my age. My insurance was paying somebody to work a couple hours twice a week. When I was recuperating from cancer. They did light housekeeping. That's all. I do light housekeeping. I don't need anybody to stand in front of my sink and wash the dishes I used for breakfast. I'm capable of doing that. But if somebody says, I don't stand on a chair, I can't stand on a chair. It wasn't that long ago that I had, I'm looking at it now, both a hall light out, because the bulb burned out. At the same time, the smoke alarm was out because it needed a new battery. A part-time neighbor was at my home in the evening and noticed that my porch light wasn't working. And they said, what's the matter with your porch light? And I said, the bulb's burned out. When you're my age, you're not steady on your feet. You don't do ladders. I also have, as do many older people, osteoporosis. If I were to fall and break a hip, my lifestyle immediately changes. And I don't want that. So I go without a battery in my smoke detector and the light bulb in my hall or outside in my front door. That's a fact of life. I'm not looking for somebody to do what I can do. I need somebody to do what I can't. Too many people don't do that. Well, I don't do that. I had my house painted about 1.5 years ago. And, of course, most people that work for me are young. Most people my age are no longer working. So people working for me are younger. Well, my house was going to be painted. Man was going to be on a ladder, painting around the windows in the front and so forth. He was going to be about this far from a tree branch that was blowing up against the house. And I said, okay, while you're up there, I'm going to give you some clippers And if you don't mind, I'd like you to clip that branch. Boy, later he reminded me that he was a house painter. He was not a tree person. Some people will only do their thing. They won't go beyond that. But look at it from this point of view. He's up there. I can't go hire a person to cut one branch. But if somebody's going to be that close to the branch and they cut it, it's going to make me very happy. What happens if you make an old lady like me happy? Especially if you're a person that needs a job. I know a lot of old ladies that need this, that, and the other done. And believe me, we are very nice people and we are very grateful. We find somebody who is considerate and helpful. I see we're being featured. You better believe we're going to tell all of our friends. And we're going to remember them ourselves every time we need something done. Also, if somebody doesn't do a good job, if they're not considerate, and they say, well, I don't do that, we also remember that. But let me now talk about jobs that you don't get paid for. By the way, we pay rather well. Some older people don't, because they're not as active in everyday life as I am. I know what things cost. Some older people haven't been in the workforce for 15 years or so, and they don't know what things cost, and they don't realize things have gone up. And so sometimes older people are not as general. I remember when I was 19, I had, by that time, 3.5 years of college, and I stopped to visit my grandfather and a couple of uncles while I was on my way down to see my dad. And the music teacher for that town was leaving town with her husband for the rest of the year, and they needed a music teacher to finish out the year. And so I taught school when I was 19 and a half for the rest of the year, teaching music in a certain little town in Missouri. My grandfather he'd been retired for so long, he hadn't dealt with money, he had no idea what things cost. And my grandmother had already died. He died about 3 years after that. But he told me, I've been working for a long time. I want to really give you something great for your birthday, because I may not be around that much longer, and I may not get you another birthday present, so I want this to be something really, really big. And he gave me $5. This was in the end of the 40s, or maybe 1950, 51. He had no idea how little that was. In his mind, he was giving me $100 or $200. And I found a jewelry store that had a sale on birthstones. They were $15 which was a good price at that time. And so that cut it down to 7.5 by it being a half price sale. And jewelry is something that if you're not a jeweler, you don't know the real value. And I thought, you know, this could appear to be quite expensive. And I can buy this, I can add $2.50 to it, and it could appear to be very valuable because, you know, jewelry is, my birthstone is an emerald. I'm sure it wasn't an emerald. It was probably 24 karat or 14 karat gold, 18, so something like that. But sometimes we don't know the value, but most of us do. We know other people. And our friends trust us. If I recommend somebody and I'm somebody's friend, that means a lot more than somebody putting an ad in the paper or knocking on a door. But let me talk temporarily. Now those are jobs, you know, they're not long-time jobs, but they will just get you through for a couple of days, a little bit of money. But that's not really what people are looking for. You're looking for a job that you can count on for a long time. In this country, well, for example, when I worked as a court interpreter, I was an independent contractor and I paid into Social Security. When I worked my way through college, I worked as a nurse. And between jobs like that, I was able to pay into Social Security the amount necessary to qualify for Social Security now, which of course is Medicare. But then I also taught public school. When you apply for jobs like that, you're not only applying for something you hope to do for many years, but something that will help you should you become disabled or when you retire. And I live now, about 50% of my income is on retirement for having been a public school teacher. So most people in this country, we're looking for a job not only for right now, but something that will help us if we should become injured on the job or if we should become disabled in some other fashion and not be able to work, and when we retire. So most of us are looking for a job not only that'll pay us a weekly or a monthly salary, but will help us, you know, pay our insurance so that if, I mean, this was before Obamacare, and we have no clue what's going on or what will be going on, but that's not anything any of us could, you know, all that time I was working, I had a good insurance as part of my job. So that's the kind of job you really want to find. Some of these require a great deal of education, some don't. But let's talk about before you get that job. If you're looking for a job, you don't have a job, you've got some time. A lot of people become late sleepers because, you know, how many hours a day can you look for a job? If you really are still looking for a job, you can't do that every day, all day, for month after month after month and year after year after year. But you do have some time. Do you know that how you spend that time could have an effect on jobs in the future? I'm running a little bit late, Larry. I hope you can hang in there with me. I'd like to give it about another 10 or 15 minutes before I close this video. And this video will continue even after I close it. During the time I was going to school, during the time I was teaching public school, and even after that, I preached Sunday morning services in a large convalescent hospital. I wasn't sure for how many years I had done that. I started out because I've had dogs that worked as a type of service dog. And I've had dogs that do what's called pet-assisted therapy. The dog you just saw moments ago, he used to be excellent at that. He would crawl up in bed with somebody and somebody would say, "Leave me alone, I want to die, I don't want to eat, just let me die." They wouldn't talk, they wouldn't do anything. He'd get in bed with them and start hugging on their neck and licking on their face, and pretty soon, "Hey dog, what's your name?" And all of a sudden they start coming alive. He was very good at that. He doesn't do that anymore because he's developed a habit of nipping at the feet of anybody who runs. Well, if a dog works in a hospital, they can't get upset with people who run. I mean, you can't have code blues and people are going to be pushing heavy carts around and running. So if a dog develops a problem like that, you have to take them out of that environment. But I've always had dogs that do that. And he can't at the moment, but my birds do, and the other dog can. I knew that I was there for a long time. I did 2 services a day. I sang 8 songs because I would go do one service in the dining room, and they're not called patients, they're called residents from 2 different areas. There were 450 residents in this hospital. From 2 areas, they would come there, and I would have a service for about an hour and a half, and then I would go to another area of the hospital and do the same thing again. And I would do 4 songs because they didn't provide a lot of the music, so I did. Every Sunday. I knew we'd done that for years. I wasn't sure until I started adding up. They started out giving us a plaque every year. And then there was a problem with expenses, and that changed, and we started getting other gifts for volunteers. It turned out to be about 8 years. I didn't need that job as a reference. Now, I was a volunteer, got no money for it. But supposing I was looking for a job for 8 years. Every time I was supposed to be there, I was there. Rain, shine, didn't make any difference. It just as though it was a paid job. I was there. Do you know that in a job of that kind, that we're talking a 450 bed convalescent hospital, some very wealthy people lived there. They had certain rooms for the wealthy. Do you know what kind of resume, you know what something like that would look like on a resume? That for 8 years I was well liked by all of the residents. I was well liked by the doctors and the nurses at the hospital and the activity staff. known by everybody. Do you know what that looks like on a resume? Supposing I was looking for a job and somebody else was looking for the same job and had the same qualifications, but I had that on my resume. That for 8 years, I got along well with people, did my job well, and was always there, and you could count on me. Hey, I would have landed the job. I didn't get anything for it, monetary-wise. But many, many, many volunteer jobs are set up. They are companies who employ people, but companies who use volunteers. There's no money, but there are perks. Not only can you get help on a resume, suppose I was looking for a job. I wasn't. But suppose I was just volunteering, not making any money, but needed a job. Do you know how many contacts I made every month? Do you know how many people came in and out of that place? Do you know how many well-to-do people who had their own businesses had their mother or their father living in that place? Had I been looking for a job? You know the contacts that I made during those 8 years had I been looking for a job? That's amazing. I see we've got another guest come in whose the numbers of end in 06. Have you been in one of my programs before, guest? Or is this your first time? You've seen me talking nonstop because I'm also, at the moment, recording on YouTube. But doing this as part of my regular broadcast, too. Have you been on one of my... You're very welcome. You're in right now, if you don't know it, in Lake Arrowhead, California. And I'm happy to have you stop by my program. But I just wondered if you'd ever been here before. I looked over, because I'm on 2 computers. I'm working with 2 webcams. But I happened to see you there, and I want you to know you're welcome. And Larry is my op for today, and he's been an op with me for something like 7 or 8 years. Make yourself at home. Feel welcome, please. Getting back to this, do you realize how much value there is in what you can put on your resume and in the contacts that you make? And there are many, many places that have all kinds of volunteers. One of the problems with volunteers is the minute that there's an opportunity to get a paying job, they leave the volunteer job. The way you leave it makes a big difference as to whether you would be recommendable by somebody else. There are other things that you could do, because if you're not working, you've got time on your hands. I mentioned that for months I needed somebody who could stand on a chair and put a battery in a smoke detector, a light bulb in a light fixture. We've got another guest whose number ends in 34. You're also welcome. Have you been on my program before? I'm doing 2 things at the same time. I'm making a video, but at the same time I'm running my regular Wednesday night program. And we were talking about wisdom and versus foolishness. And as a part of that, I'm making a video on YouTube regarding how to get a job. And right now I have deviated from how to get a paying job to doing something for free, but how, you're welcome. Have you been on my program before, or are you new to my program? With the guests who have a screen name, I could tell if they've been here before, but with the numbers, I don't. And you're very welcome here. I hope you enjoy yourself. And I hope you enjoy the program. Okay, getting back to YouTube. There are people that, I had a window break. You know, it was that same window that I was telling you about. Had a painter that I wanted him to cut down a branch. Well, that branch had hit a window, and I had a crack in a window for a long time. I finally got around to calling a person. Now, the one who came has put a window in my house before, or you have been a few times, okay. Has done work at my home before. Now, his father owns the company. And he had another person who was actually putting the window in. He, of course, had driven, and he was responsible to make sure that the window was the right size and all of that. But he was laid back and observing the guy that was actually doing the work. He noticed that there was a strip of something hanging off of the front door. Well, there again, that requires getting on a chair. I'm not falling off a chair and risking a broken hip for no amount of money. That strip of metal hanging off that door could hang there for the next 6 years, as far as I'm concerned. I'm not going to risk an injury doing something like that. I have all of the tools that it takes to fix it. I also have the knowledge of knowing how to fix it if somebody were there doing it. But while he was there, I didn't notice. I came in the house and I made them some kind of a drink I make. It's kind of like half of a cup of coffee and half of a cup of chocolate. And it's got a lot of flavors and whipped cream and stuff in it. I came in the house, it was around Christmas time, and I had big Christmas mugs. You know, it's like a 2 or 3 cup drink. I came out with that for the 2 of them. He had fixed it. You want to bet what company is going to do my windows from now on? And how about my neighbors? I live in a mountain, so I don't have that many people living around me, but I have 3 other houses fairly near. One is my age, and his wife has passed away, so he is also living in a big home by himself. Another person does not live up here. They come up on weekends. When they need to hire work done, guess who they say, you know anybody who can do this? See, cost him nothing to do it. It didn't have a lot of value placed to it. But everybody I know and everybody my neighbors know are going to hire him and that company and anybody he recommends. So whether you do it out of a heart of Christian love, or you do something for somebody just because they need it done and you're capable of doing it. Do you know how many people I have helped that are perfectly capable of standing on a chair or getting on a ladder, and that thing's been hanging there for months, never did it? He did. I know that's going to come back to bless him many times. Now, whether a person does it because they're a Christian and we're good Samaritans, or whether you just do it because you're a good citizen, it's going to come back to help you. And while it may mean money in your pocket now, or it may mean later, you will eventually be paid in some way or another for doing deeds like that. I know people who are takers, and I know people who are givers. And believe me, and I don't stand alone, there are a lot of us. We see somebody, and we've been talking about foolishness and wisdom. We see people that do dumb things, and we don't hire them and we don't recommend them. We're not talking about a lot of money maybe, but hey, sometime a recommendation, you don't know where it leads. Besides, it's an opportunity to do a good deed, but it may lead to something that's very good for you. I meet all kinds of, you have no idea the people I know. Really. I live in a resort area. We have celebrities up here. I won't name them, but had about as big as you can get just down the road from me for many years. She has moved now. But a word to the wise. But there are people who do dumb stuff. I needed I think windows washed, and I needed them to come out and give me a price. And I know my neighbor had his washed. It was $300 for a couple hours. I called somebody. Now this was right after my cancer surgery, and there was a lot of stuff I couldn't do in those days that I can do now, thank the Lord. But I called. This is a lesson in what not to do. And he and his wife were busy, and somehow they lost the paper, and then they forgot they were supposed to come. And I had called that morning, and they were supposed to come around noon. And noon came, and they hadn't come, and I called. Oh, you called? We were going to come? Well, they were supposed to come at 2 then. And a friend was here. She was helping me a little bit do some work. And she was here. So she was aware of all of this going on. Well, 2 o'clock came, he wasn't there. I mean, how do you mess up in the morning and then mess up again with the same person in the same day? Don't do that if you're looking for a job. And finally, about 2:30, he drives up. He says, I wouldn't have hired him. I can't think of a job insignificant enough that I would have trusted him to do. Why wasn't he here at 2? Well, I guess he was watching television, and when it was 2 o'clock, he realized, oh, it's 2, so he turned off the television and changed his clothes and got in his car. And, of course, he had to go down and put gas in his car. my friend said, "Are you counting on going down or talking to him? Or can I?" I said, "You can. Have fun." She goes down. She said, "Well, obviously you know you don't have the job." Why? Well, forget about this morning. You're supposed to be here at 2. Well, I turned the television off at 2. I got my clothes on. I went and got gas. I mean, come on. You gotta have some responsibility. I know we have a lot of people in this area and in California, and I think pretty much throughout the United States now, people from other countries, and they come from other cultures. You've got to do things which are satisfactory to the people hiring you and paying you. Not the way they do things at home on your own rancho. In your house, you do things. Now the little dog is here. No, same dog. It doesn't make any difference how they do things where you're from. You got to do things the way they do it where you're looking for the job. You can't just be irresponsible, do it when you're ready, and expect to be hired. You might be great at what you do, but you don't, if it's not the way the person who is hiring you does it or wants it done. Well, this is the way I do it in my home. Well, guess what? They're in my home, and we don't do it that way. Okay, I'm going to close this video. I've got a lot I want to tell you, not only about where to look for jobs and what kind of job to look for and what kind of job to get trained for, because they're training people for jobs that don't exist and it's a waste of time. But also give you a few more clues along this line, and then when you're actually looking at a paid job, how to protect yourself against other people who are not as scrupulous and as honorable, and how to protect yourself against them. So right now I've talked about work and not pay, and when somebody says I'm looking for a job, they're really looking for a paycheck, but they're, especially while we're in the book of Proverbs and we're talking about foolishness versus wisdom, it's a good time for me to share a few ideas. But I'm going to close for now. And until the next video, God bless.